right now especially, you have a lot of people building things with AI and Claude Code. They're great tools, right? And it helps you save a lot of time and money. We use all the AI tools out there, but I think that there is still a gap where it comes to the actual architecture and infrastructure of whatever you're building. Right, because you might be a great software, you can build it in 24 hours, but it's not going to be scalable in a few months, right? So you have a lot of dev shops that are over-promising and under-delivering. They say, oh yeah, I can get this done the same thing in a month, or it's going to cost this much. They keep adding on extra costs, especially with hourly billing. We don't do hourly billing. Everything is fixed price, which allows us and our clients to really A, have transparency, but B, really make sure expectations are super clear, because when you're billing hourly, people are just racking up hours. It's, oh yeah, we have this thing, it's delayed and this, and the next thing you know, a project that would have cost you $20K is going to cost you $100.
Today, I am joined by Dan Melnik. He's a serial entrepreneur, software builder, and the co-founder of Zing. Dan's been building and starting businesses since 2011. Starting with his own e-commerce company and a mobile app marketplace before shifting gears to help other founders grow. He's originally from the Chicago area, but now is based in Austin. And Dan launched Zing in 2022 with a very, very straightforward mission: give brands the marketing and software development firepower they need to scale without the bloat of a traditional agency. His team has helped drive hundreds of millions of dollars in results for his clients. So I'm really excited to have you here, Dan. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Ahmad.
Let's go back to 2011. I think I'm always curious onto what made you jump into entrepreneurship and what was your first venture?
Yeah, so for me, it was more so it's like a hobby. I mean, I'm growing up, always wanted to play baseball professionally. I was not good enough, but I really just loved the game, and I started collecting autographs when I was 12. And so I used to go down to spring training with my parents, that they would take me down there, would send cards in the mail to get signed to all of my favorite teams and players. When I was like 17, I started to I had gotten a car. I was 16, 17. I was driving to downtown from the suburbs to go and wait at hotels, go to games myself, and I was just spending a bunch of time and money collecting all these autographs. And a friend of mine was like, hey man, you're spending all this time and money on this. Have you thought about selling some of these things? I said, I don't know about that. I'm a big collector. He's like, listen, you don't need 5 signed cards of the same player. You can go and, keep one and sell 4. So that's kind of how I got started. It was an e-commerce business on eBay. Started very small. We grew it to be like an eBay top-rated seller, over 10,000 items. But yeah, it's pretty much was my first venture into entrepreneurship.
That's cool. I think those stories when people start without knowing they started something, it's just, you just fell into it. But what made you fall in love with it? Because I know that there's a stretch there. I'm sure there's many kids that traded cards. There's many kids that have sold things in eBay, but doing it once is different than doing it 100 times. Where do you think that drive came from, or what was that spark of love?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was awesome. I was here, I had my own business. I was in high school, college, and I'm I'm selling stuff and I'm making some money from it, and it really just gave me this ability of hey, I can sort of do my own thing, and I was working jobs. I was working jobs for many years, and, it's very different when you're working a job. I had worked at Burger King. I did a ballet. I did lots of different jobs, and you clock in, clock out. People are telling you what to do, and I'm like, well, here I have the ability to work as hard as I need to, or work as little as I don't need to, right? And so I think that was really just the spark that went off in my mind.
I love that. I think I have young nieces and nephews, and parents are like, I want to teach them about work. And it's funny to see different parents' dynamics. And some of them are like, I pay them for chores. And then others are like, I would never pay them for chores. That's the minimum they should do. I want them to start a business. And I want them to do something more than the minimum. And you just hit a spot that everybody goes through. You're always, regardless of your economic background, you're always like, I want to make my own money. Do I want to work retail, fast food, this type of jobs, which are normal and nothing bad about them. But just, do I want to do that, or do I want? They're both hard. I think you just have to choose your heart, and what you did is definitely something that. Why do you think a lot of people are more like set in their ways that, okay, to make money I need to work a job instead of starting your own thing?
I mean, I think at least, I mean, I don't know about anywhere else in the world because I've never lived there, but at least in the US, like that is just kind of how we're wired. Um, where I grew up, I was in one of the top academic areas in the US, so like one of the top rated high schools, and it was not about if you were going to college, it was where you were going, right? And so I think it's kind of how like we're wired, right? It's like, oh, like, your goal should be go to the best school, get the best job, right? It's like I think now, in the last, 5, 10, 15 years, you're starting to see more glamour towards entrepreneurship being pushed in that direction. Like I think shows like Shark Tank have really changed things for sure. But I still believe that a lot of the schools and the way that we are raised and taught, they, teach you and build you up to like just part of the system, which is just going into corporate and making as much money as possible through someone else's business.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe not even money. Perhaps it's more prestigious. Like they position it as it's very prestigious to go work for the big four, or it's very prestigious to do X and Y. And the money is the carrot on top. Whereas with entrepreneurship, I feel I'm an entrepreneur and I just feel the sense of creation and doing things is more rewarding than the money itself in a way.
100%. Yeah, no, yeah, I think it is the prestige factor for sure. Where people, yeah, once again, it's about what they're doing, where they went to school. Um, and I think it's like you have many people that are sort of risk averse in a sense in this country. People, but there's definitely much more people willing to like come take a risk. I think like at the same token compared to like other places. You see like a lot more risk aversion in Canada and Europe and other countries, but I definitely think that there are lots of Americans that would never take the leap. They're just comfortable, right? They're looking for this kind of notion of work-life balance. There's nothing wrong with it. I think that most people want that, and that's totally fine. And then I always tell people, entrepreneurship is not for most people. So you have to kind of understand what you actually want out of your life and out of your career.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think differentiates a successful entrepreneur from a wannabe?
Yeah, I think just the ability to go all in and be resilient, not give up. I mean, I see so many people that, and even friends of mine that start something, do it for a few months, it fails, and that's it. They never try anything else, right? And so, you have to have this mindset of like, hey, yeah, something can fail, but what did you learn from it? And let's go back and start like the next thing, right? Or you have no plan B. Because if your plan B is this thing, I'm going to go back to corporate, this thing, it's like you're probably never going to go and achieve your goal, right? So there is obviously like a happy medium. I think many founders, I don't advise people to go in full time and dive in, especially if you have family, kids, all those things. Make sure you have those things taken care of. But I think really pushing yourself to the limit as much as possible. Of like, what can you do to actually put your back up against the wall? Because if you don't feel any pressure, it's much harder to actually achieve any meaningful results.
I agree with you. I think it is a ability to go all in. I also think, I don't know if it's happened to you, but when someone tells me I want to start something, I'm like, don't do it. Like I don't do it. Maybe because of, if you have to ask me about it, I don't think you're ready. I don't think you're willing to go the nth mile, work 100 hours a week for 10 years in a row to even see something of results. Do you feel that way as well?
No, I agree 100%. Like I said earlier, it's definitely not for most people, and I think most people shouldn't do it because they don't, because like, especially nowadays, people are like looking once again for work-life balance, right? And I think, For sure, once you get to like a certain level of scale, and if you delegate, I think that that should be the goal, right? It's like how can you get to a level of like, hey, I'm in a position now where I can delegate things, I can work less, but like there is going to be several years, months, what have you, where you are really going to have to grind and make massive sacrifices that I think most people are not willing to go through that sort of, you know, being dialed in, so to speak, right? So it really is this balance of like, hey, how much am I willing to actually go and sacrifice to go and achieve my goals?
I have a beef with work-life balance. You've mentioned it a few times, and I think, like I'm a very sports kind of guy, or I like athleticism, and I think that you wouldn't hear Michael Jordan say, "I want work-life balance," or Tiger Woods, "I want work-life balance," or Federer. Like these, I feel that entrepreneurs should strive for greatness, like they did, and there's like a metaphor. It's almost like a reflection in them. And an entrepreneur that wants work-life balance is not a Tiger Woods. It's not a Michael Jordan. It's not. You cannot do that. And like you said, not everybody's fit for that. But if you want that path, you have to be like, I'm going to win every season. I'm going to play every game like it's my last. And I think it takes that intensity. And then when they retire, that's when they do work-life balance, not during your work. Like during your work, milk it, go full out. And I think that that's why entrepreneurs also cannot go corporate, because you work like your life depends on it, and corporate sometimes that doesn't even matter.
Exactly.
You
Yeah,
don't move the needle. You're just a cog. You
100%.
cannot go faster, or else the machine breaks.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I saw something recently, like the founders of Poppy, which sold for $2 billion, like a 5 year thing. I mean, they were just very impressive. They're here in Austin as well, and they were saying that. And I always say this, and I've heard them say this like multiple times. Work-life balance does not exist in entrepreneurship. Exactly to your point. It's really just you have to, like everything is just like like they have 3 kids. It's like you bring your kids into everything that you're doing, and it's just part of everything. You show them, you bring them into the business, and it's like how do you kind of do hustle as much as you can with the family, with kids, and for sure it's not easy, but like that's what they did, and they were very successful doing so.
Yeah, yeah. You built a e-commerce company and a mobile app marketplace very early. What did those teach you about what founders actually need?
Yeah, and with the e-commerce store, it was something where I started to see this trend of more and more people buying online. I started that back in 2011. And so eBay was a partner at the time with PayPal, and PayPal, coming to the market really gave people this sort of security, right? Because at the time, even 5, 6 years prior, people were concerned about, putting their credit cards online, about, putting that information out there. And PayPal was this kind of happy middle ground of, giving you this sense of security. But yeah, I mean, it was really something where eBay was great because you could really validate whatever you were selling. And even now, you can go and see like, what's sold on there, right? What is similar, what's selling, not what's listed with the actual sold items. So it's very easy to validate. And for the mobile app, it was a bit more challenging because I never truly validated this concept, and that failed completely. But yeah, it was really something where I just kind of went to market, didn't do like enough research, and didn't raise money. I had no idea what I was doing, and so that was definitely something where I failed. But I did meet one of my partners through that, so from that standpoint, you could say it was sort of successful.
And like you said before, you fail, you learn. You didn't raise money. You didn't validate the product. You didn't validate the marketplace. All these things were important lessons. When did you decide, I don't want to keep building my own company, but I want to start helping other people build theirs? What triggered that shift?
Yeah, I mean, so I had hired. This was back in 2021. 2020, maybe it's even before that, 2020. I'd hired Kasim, who's now one of my co-founders, as my developer for my app. And so after lots of trials and tribulations of really poor developers, people who are not good, I finally I have to say I met somebody good, right? And so he had rebuilt my app pretty quickly. It was very high quality work. But after some time, I said, listen, like I don't want to keep pursuing this business because I had spent a bunch of money. and effort and everything, and I never made any money with it. I felt like it was like just a complete failure. And so Qasim was basically just like, hey, why don't we partner and try to get some clients together? And I said, well, what do you have in mind? And his whole thing was like, let's go on Upwork, and we would use my profile, try and get some clients. And that was back in 21 when we started that. Got one client. They were based here in Austin, Texas, and that company had raised about 15 million. And they were super happy with our work. It was like, just serial entrepreneurs. And that's kind of how we got started. So it was really more of my co-founder's idea. We were not even a company at that point. And from my standpoint, I saw, hey, listen, like we're getting all this traction, all this validation. Like, let's go and actually start an LLC and become an actual business. And I brought in one more partner in 23 who kind of helped me with the client success side of it. So I was like, you know what, it's too hard to scale an agency with the model that we have we needed just one more American. So that was super helpful to have him as part of the business. But yeah, I mean, it was really more of his idea. And I started to see how people were super happy with their work. And like a lot of these dev shops are awful, you know, common thing where they kind of hold the code hostage and they like just don't deliver on their work. So I saw this opportunity in the market that we can obviously do better. We can kind of just bring this mix of efficiency and cost. And so that's kind of where we sit nowadays.
I'm going to push back on what you said that it was his idea. I think it was the market's idea.
Right.
I'm going to say that it's almost the entrepreneur's journey, at least the way I've understood it, is that you might have an idea, but the market has another idea. And you need to find the market's idea. And sometimes people are like so focused on what I want to do, what I can bring to the market, whereas really you are valuable to the market at a certain way. And like the best thing to have, at least the business that I pushed for weren't as successful as the business that pulled me, and some people, maybe this might sound a little nuanced, so I want to express it a little bit clearer. My first business was a Andean grain business that was at the highest quality. I wanted to provide grains that were clean, selected optically with these like machines, and they were perfect, pristine, and they were packaged in a really beautiful way. And I gave you multiple uses, not only the traditional like Andean soups or the way that we're usually consumed. So I was like trying to create value from branding and use cases and this very high quality product. And the market didn't want that. The market wanted a cheaper product. That's what they wanted. They didn't want, it was a commodity to them. And if I'm just going to make soup, I'm going to make the cheapest soup. And they weren't looking for quality. A very, very small segment of people were. And this to me felt like pushing the stone uphill. It was tough. It was grueling. Every day I had to convince people to buy this thing. And ultimately that business sold because of luck, I think. Not necessarily anything was really special. But my new business, I was saying no to, which is Infinity. My new business was, once I exited, I had some money, I started to invest it, and then people were saying, can I invest with you? And I was like, no. And they were like, yeah, can I invest with you? I think it's really interesting what you're doing. And I was like, no, I only want to manage my money. Until one day, one guy was like, please take my money. And I was like, okay, this is validation. The market called me in, and then this has been like a resounding success because it was like the market called me. And that's why I wanted to push back on what you just said, that it was his idea. I think the market understood that you guys were more proficient, that Upwork and Fiverr and developers are usually low quality, or else like freelance are usually low quality, or you really don't know what you're going to do, and you cannot hire the best ones because they work for the big company. So it's like you saw that problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead.
No, just going to say, yeah, you're spot on. Yeah, I think that makes total sense. And I think it's also where, I see your point, right? So a lot of these freelancers, I think there's a lot of talented people out there. I think sometimes when you're a one person, business, that what happens often in the market is these folks take on way more than they can handle, and then, you're not a priority for them sometimes. Just to your point, they might be working for some bigger companies. So they just don't care, and for us, like, we're not like that. Obviously we have the ability to scale. We have a team of many developers. So 100%. But I would say it's still his idea to get on Upwork and do the business, but for sure, like the market validated that his theory to be
That's
correct.
true.
But yeah, so
And what are these gaps? Like my channel has tons of entrepreneurs, a ton of investors, people that are listening to this are going to be like, what am I? Yeah, I have an idea for a software. I have an idea for an app. What what are the problems they're going to face, and why is Zing a solution to that?
for sure, yeah. I mean, right now, especially, you have a lot of people building things with AI and Claude Code and OpenClaw, and they're great tools, right? And it helps you save a lot of time and money. We use all the AI tools out there, but I think that there is still a gap where it comes to the actual architecture and infrastructure of whatever you're building, right? Because you might be a great software, you can build it in 24 hours, but it's not going to be scalable in a few months, right? So, I think that's one thing. I think also you have a lot of dev shops that are over promising and under delivering, right? They say, oh, yeah, I can get this done the same thing in a month, or it's going to cost this much. And they keep adding on extra costs, especially with hourly billing, right? We don't do hourly billing. Everything is fixed price, which allows us and our clients to really, A, have transparency, but B, really make sure expectations are super clear, right? Because when you're billing hourly, people are just racking up hours. It's, oh yeah, we have this thing, it's delayed and this, and the next thing you know, a project that would have cost you 20K is going to cost you 100. And so I hated that as a customer, and that's why we don't do that, right? So I learned from my own experience of hiring dev shops and developers of what is efficient and what's not.
I like it. It's more results oriented rather than time oriented, which is the biggest beef that everybody has with lawyers, developers, anybody that gets paid by the hour is like, where's the result? Sometimes you're ping ponging back and forth, and then I understand the developer side as well. Like if a client is like pivoting and changing things and then saying, oh, this doesn't look as good, how do you manage that part? Because I think that's where the fork meets the road. It's like, how do you manage a situation where the expectation is 20 hours of work,
Sure.
and then the client is just unsatisfied and they want more or they want different.
Yeah, all of our agreements have a clause which does allow people to change requirements at an updated cost. So if they want to add a feature that's going to cost more, obviously. So we come back and say, hey, listen, like you're asking for these things. It's going to be an extra how much money? If you want to do it, just let us know, and then we'll go ahead and move forward, right? So 100% Ahmad, it's very standard in this industry where people are, especially startups, are saying, hey, build this, and they change their mind, they say build that. So it's something that you have to kind of brace yourself for sure.
We talked a lot about development, which is, I think, clear. It's a everything is bespoke, and I agree what you said with Claude AI and AI tools. It's you don't know what you don't know. So when you do something with code, if you look at it, you don't know what's missing, where it's unstable, where it might be expired in 6 months, and then you might have a bigger problem later. So I think you're spot on. The expert needs to use AI, not the uninitiated to use AI, because then they don't know what they don't know. That's the
Right.
biggest risk that you can have. But let's move on to marketing. Like Zing is a software development and a marketing. Why do you think those two things need to live together?
Yeah, because ultimately, I mean, especially, so we do like a lot of stuff in e-commerce, for example, right? It depends like on the industry, but typically if you're building a website, for example, everything has to work in sync, right? So it's like building a house with no foundation, right? So if you're going to run paid ads, and if your website is low converting, it defeats the purpose. Or you're going to be spending a lot of money to try and acquire customers. So understanding, hey, listen, if we're going to build the house, let's make sure that the foundation is out, that everything is just super efficient, right? So that's where we come in and say, hey, listen, like we can help build your store. We can optimize it. We can do CRO, conversion optimization. But on top of that, we can run paid ads to help. How do we take that store and get it to as many sales as possible, right? Actually make your money make sense. Because we won't even take on a project for paid ads if the funnel is not optimized. So, hey, listen, like, let's fix the funnel first, and then we can go and run the ads.
That makes sense, and I think it's very important what you just said, because I feel that when they don't live together, like you said, you might have. I actually have an entrepreneur who asked me for advice, and he developed this incredibly comprehensive platform. It had every bell and whistle you can imagine, and he's been building it for like 4 years. And my question has always been, when are you launching? And he says, next month. I'm ready next month. I'm ready next month. It's been 4 years. And I think it's because he hasn't married. He's a technical expertise guy. He loves the development side. He loves the tools. He loves to create AI powered stuff. But when he doesn't combine with sales, I always think like, how is this gonna communicate to people? How are they gonna land here? How are they gonna know the benefits of all these different gadgets and benefits that you're offering if you're not married together? Then you're gonna have to hire another expert who's gonna come in and say, hey, the market doesn't want this, or the market doesn't understand this, or you're trying to do too many things at once. Let's try to be the king of one. And then, like he overbuilt is my point. So I like your approach of if we cannot build, let's not develop. If we cannot sell, let's not develop.
Exactly. 100%. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to waste people's money. Let's just put it that way. I don't want people to, and even the same token, if somebody comes to me, I feel like that we can't be successful, like the right fit for them. I'm not someone that tries to sell people at all costs, right? It has to make sense, right? And I don't want to take things on where I don't feel good about the fact that we can actually help them. So
I really appreciate that. I think it's really important. I like your tagline: flexible, results driven, truly collaborative. What does that look like in practice? And can you compare it to like what a traditional agency does?
yeah, I mean, for us, many people hire us. For example, we have clients that are other agencies who need dev work from time to time. We're not, doing like any minimums or minimum like monthly fees or retainers, for software development. It's more so like sometimes, yeah, people need maintenance, but oftentimes it's like, hey, like, listen, this is the work that we have now. Let's get the work done. And then from there, if you have more work, we can obviously work with you. But I don't lock people into long contracts. It's really flexible from that sense because it allows them to save money. Obviously, cash flow is important. And it's like it allows them, if they want to bring in their own devs in-house, they can do that. We can work with them on that implementation or migration or just handover in general, right? So I've been doing that for years because once again, I've been on the other side of the coin and I don't appreciate when people are locking you into just long-term contracts.
Do you specialize in an industry? Do you have something that you excel better than others? Because I find that one thing that I don't like about traditional agencies models is I agree with they say the retainer for a year minimum, and you're like, but what if I don't need you? What if I do need you? What if I need you more? What if I need you? And then the other thing is the jack of all trades. I find that to me is a little bit of a turnoff. Maybe because I'm an entrepreneur and I like specialized things. How do you guys see that?
Yeah, I mean, I think specialties are important for sure. Like we've done stuff in different industries, like but e-commerce, a lot of where we sit, like I mentioned earlier, we're Shopify partners, we're BigCommerce partners. We do like a lot of WooCommerce and we're Shopline partners. So some of the big, all the big e-commerce players, we do partner with them and help build like on their platform. So that's one thing for sure. Same with paid ads. We do lots of paid ads for e-commerce. But we also do like a lot in home services, for example, where we build custom CRMs and software for those industries and B2B SaaS and tech. So I think like specialization, it really depends. I think when it comes to dev work, for sure, the tech stack should be like a specialty, like Node, React, that we specialize in all these different tech stacks. But industry sometimes can be variable because it really comes down to the technology, right? Like for example, if the project involves an ERP system like SAP, like we don't do that. I don't have that expertise. I don't have that knowledge. I wouldn't take that on, right? So there's definitely things that we don't specialize in, and I'm more than happy to send projects to other people in my network who do specialize in those kinds of systems.
How do you feel, or what was the feeling when you helped others reach $100 million in results?
I mean, that's the best thing about this business, right? Is like the ability to see other people succeed, and that's, really just why I do it because people, like we've had clients that have started with us and been really small and we help them grow exponentially, right? So just being able to take a business that's smaller and help them grow and help them increase spend for ads, for example, in a very profitable way, right? And I think that you see a lot of companies today that are spending crazy amounts of money every month, but they're not profitable. And it defeats the purpose, right? So for me, it's like, how do I take somebody from A to Z to just to that next level in a profitable way? And for me, it's like that's the most important thing is like helping our clients grow, being like a true partner for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Can you walk us maybe one example or someone that you've done that with that perhaps you want to shout out if you want to do it
Sure.
directly, or you can do it anonymous as well. But I want to understand like what case studies do you have
Sure.
that validate your model?
Yeah, I mean, for example, it's on our website, but AppSumo was one of our clients, and so they had a really critical situation on the software development side, actually, on Shopify app development. And for them, they had this app that they were selling, right? Because they have lots of different apps in house. They were spinning it off, 7-figure plus transaction, and a very strict deadline of like, hey, they have to get this done by this time, and if they don't get it done, the sale is off, right? So Shopify had these updates. They had to get these done. And I know like the founder Noah Kagan put out different proposal. He was looking for like RFPs. He was asking for proposals from different agencies, and people were charging him insane amounts of money. But we found a way to work with him like in a very cost-effective way, and he was super happy with us. He even did like a video recording, which he almost never does because he's super busy. A and B, he expects very high results and work from people. And he did this video for Zing, and it was an honor to work with him. But yeah, I mean, that was one of the projects, which was like a very critical project that really helped to make sure the sale was super smooth and that they could spin off this app. But yeah, that was super exciting to work with.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What about misunderstandings? Like people that are watching this, I'm curious. I've had ideas of, oh, I want to start a Shopify store. Or what are some things that you're like, let me tell you these misunderstandings so that you go in with your eyes wider open.
Yeah, I mean, for Shopify e-commerce, I mean, definitely it's can be a great business, but you have to understand all of your numbers. Like I've had people, I've hopped on calls with somebody where they're like, hey, like, can you run my paid ads? And I was like, okay, well, tell me more about what you're doing. Like, well, I'm in the East Coast, and when I ship to California, I'm losing money. I'm like, I can't work with you because like you don't have that, like it's just like it's not a profitable business, and they didn't have that much budget. So I'm like, it makes zero sense. I'm like, make sure everything is dialed in first, right? And so, because fulfillment, logistics, and we have clients. We have a client in Florida that does not want to advertise in California because it's so expensive to go and ship there, right? So understanding like all of your costs and fulfillment costs is one thing. But second, like you can build a store, you can the most optimized, most coolest looking Shopify store, but if you don't have any way to drive traffic to that store, it doesn't. It's just like it's just going to sit there, right? So whatever you're building, you have to understand what is your strategy to drive traffic, and of course you can drive traffic with organic. I've seen people do it. Organic can be very challenging because it's inconsistent, right? You can have a video have a few thousand views, you can have a video have a few hundred views, you can have a video have like a million views, and there are formulas, for sure to drive traffic, but no matter what you're doing, it's probably going to cost you like a lot of money. It's going to cost you money probably to run paid ads, which makes the most sense typically, right? So make sure that you have enough budget so whatever you're selling that you have to just drive some traffic in some way, right? And if you're selling certain products like supplements, for example, you're probably not going to have first order profitability, right? You have to focus on how do you, have just a great product, right? To have your customers come back and have great lifetime value. Because you might lose money on that first order, and that's okay in that industry, right? Because it's a supplement, but, how do you go and get them to come back a second, third, fourth, and fifth time to make this be super profitable.
I love it. So you said cost, know your numbers very well, especially fulfillment, which is critical. And second, it's more about driving traffic than anything. And what I got from you is that it's really about the pay to play. Like you cannot depend on viral videos or trying to have a organic outreach because it's really going to be inconsistent. If you want consistency results, or at least getting these famous metrics like return on ad spend or all of these that are critical, you need to be running these ads. Do you have any rules of thumb that you say, okay, if a product is this much, that much, this return, then it's going to be okay, or is it really varied?
Yeah, it depends on the product. I mean, ideally for supplements or just in general, you want to have 80% margin because it's going to cost you a good amount of money to go and acquire customers and other fees. And, and I think also one thing that I didn't mention was Amazon, for example. Amazon is a great channel. We don't do Amazon marketing, but I'm a big Amazon customer. I have many friends in the space. Amazon is the biggest marketplace today, and it's like Google for ecom, right? People are searching on Amazon for different products. So putting your supplements on Amazon, if something is super, niche, and I think that's also just one more thing, right? If you're selling like a product, understand first who is your customer. Because if you're just selling a supplement or apparel, how do you differentiate yourself? There's a lot of different brands, right? So if you understand, hey, my customer is men in their 40s that like to watch football, right? So it's like if that's your customer, that's great. So triple down on that audience, understand, be obsessed with that customer. But if your customer's anybody and everybody from day one, well, good luck with that because that's going to cost you a lot of money, right? For example, listen to the founder of Bloom, and they're crushing it now, but they were super niche in the beginning. It was very like woman, I think, is like a pre-workout supplement for women who want to build muscle working out or something like that, right? But now they're in Target and their audience is different. It's anybody who shops at Target, right? So it's like you have to understand the very beginning, like who is your audience? How do you niche down and really speak to them? Because those big brands who are at Target, they don't care about those niche audiences, right? They don't speak to them. They're very broad. But that's how you're going to go and differentiate yourself. Say, hey, I'm going to speak to this very niche audience. And even if it's like a few million people or 1 million people, you can speak to them and really dial it in. So.
Yeah, yeah. I 100% agree on that. I think that the more niche, the better. Sometimes it's like you want to be the if you're the king of 1 million people, that's very very valuable. But you cannot be the king of 100 million people. Like there's no way to do that. Or Amazon is that king already, so there's no
Exactly.
way to outperform them, especially with no budget or little budget. I had a conversation with the entrepreneur yesterday. He said, and I agree with him, that starting a business is like the hardest thing you can do. And then scaling a business, it's like doing that again. And I agree with him in a way because, the people that you started with are not the same people that you can scale with. Even yourself, like you might be a great founder, but you're not a great CEO. And you've been now in these two sides of the aisle. You've been on the helping people scale and then also starting brands that are small and then help them grow. What is the most common mistake you see brands make when they're trying to grow?
I think you have to understand all of your costs, similar to what I said earlier, right? It's like, how much money is it actually going to take? How much money do you need, right? Do you have enough money? Because oftentimes it's going to cost you more and take more time than you actually think, right? But I think just in general, the same thing that I mentioned earlier, right, is like, which I didn't do with the workout pros. Like, understand your customers, interview them, like, really speak to them, be obsessed. Like, Bezos talks about this all the time. In the very beginning, Amazon also were selling only books. Like, you're super obsessed with the customers and, like, really make sure that whatever you're doing is really going to serve them, right? Because, if you're a customer, great. If you're selling a product for, like chops, for example, in the very beginning with something like it's like a product for CrossFitters. Okay, well you're already like like in that audience. Like if you do CrossFit, super easy, low hanging fruit, perfect. Now go to the gym talk to other people in your class, talk to other friends that are in CrossFit, go to the CrossFit conference or whatever the event that they have, world championships, and just freaking talk to people. And I think if you do that, you will really get in the psychographics of your customers. They're like, you're going to have a lot of people that say, hey, I have this problem and this product can solve this problem, right? And so I think that like, people will just launch and start things without just by skipping that step, right? So really be obsessed, and that's not going to cost you much, right? You can go to gyms, you can drop in a class, you can go to these events. It's not going to cost you much, but go there and really be obsessed with your customer, and you'll be fine.
Beautiful, beautifully said. And I like how you drill down more onto the customer because, right, when you want to scale, I think the easiest thing to do is raise some money, perhaps. I'm not talking about these like massive raises, raise 50K, 100K, $1 million and throw it on Meta and throw it on Google and throw it there. And then you're like, I didn't get anywhere, right? Or because I didn't understand the customer, it took my business to the wrong place. So I think understanding them is really important. I like that. Great answer. What's your take on people building their own software versus doing off the shelf? I've always had this conundrum.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what you're trying to do, right? I mean, if your main business is like a software, you for sure want to build it custom because you don't want to take something off the shelf because you're just relying on a different software to run, like, do your whole business. So if that's like if you're building a software app, you can put together a lot of pieces of different software. But what if they go under? What if something happens? You're out of luck. So I think in the beginning it's okay because you're proving out the concept. You're understanding like product market fit, and it like allows you to save money. But as you scale, like have that in mind. Say, hey, like my objective and goal is to build something custom because I want to own this and I want to make sure that nothing can happen to it. Like nobody's going to shut down and screw me over, right? So, but yeah, I mean, like you don't have to go and reinvent the wheel. Like for example, like if you're in e-commerce, like you just use Shopify. Shopify's fine. Like if you're over 100 million, then you can have a different conversation. There are many massive enterprise companies that are doing, like 9 figures on Shopify. It's not an issue, right? So it's just understanding kind of what is your business and what are you trying to accomplish. If you're a home services company, in the very beginning, you can use these platforms like Jobber or Job Nimbus, right? They're great off-the-shelf CRM tools, but the same thing. I mean, I've talked to people who are doing, 8 figures plus in their home services business where they're spending, $15,000 a month on these softwares that are off the shelf. They don't even own them. Right. So at that point, it might make sense to build something custom because the problem with some of these tools when you scale up is like, hey, these softwares are doing things that they, are charging them for features that they're not even using. And there's other features that they would like to have and they don't actually use. Right. So I think that there's definitely opportunities there. But yeah, like in the very beginning, don't make things too complicated. Keep things simple. And then once you scale, have that in mind.
Yeah, agree. I found that when I looked you up and researched you, you like to say you're from the Chicago area, but now you live in Austin. How has Austin become a major hub? It has become a major hub for founders. It's a very tech-forward city. How has that, or being there, shaped the way you run Zing?
Yeah, I mean it's been great. I mean, I lived in Dallas for a few years and great city. Just not as many founders, like a lot of big companies. Things are very spread out. Austin's a small city, but you have a lot of entrepreneurs per capita. You have a lot of resources and events. I mean, there's a lot of things happening. It's definitely a step up from Dallas. When I was in Chicago, also, is not as much happening, and so especially, I wasn't really doing. I was doing some entrepreneurship back then, in Chicago, and I went to college in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So, but I was just, I wasn't really thinking about meetups or other things like that. But yeah, I mean, definitely Austin is a top tier city for that, and I think especially if you're in the early stage, like the 0 to 1 journey, Austin's great. I think when you really want to scale, you look at cities that are much larger, that are obviously more expensive, like New York and San Francisco. And like I'm actually moving to New York in July, so it's like we're growing, and it's like more opportunities there. So But yeah, I mean, I think like when you're just getting started, Austin's great. It's very cheap to live here, and people are super friendly and just very helpful. But I think it's like besides the scaling thing, it's like when you're like at a certain level, it's like anything, right? If you're running on the high school track, it's great. You're the very top runner in high school. But if you really want to compete, you go to the Olympics, right? And I think that like the Bay Area like, in New York are like the Olympics in the U.S. So that's the way I see it.
I agree. I think that certain cities have like, I live in Miami, so we call it the Miami effect.
Right.
We're all obsessed with real estate. We're all obsessed with, that, and we there's a big hustle mentality, whereas Austin has that very founder-like mentality. SF and New York have the different, like more, New York more financial, perhaps SF more entrepreneurial, but large scale entrepreneurial. And I think that, this podcast is called Return on Identity because I want to hear the stories that change how you think. But I think that where you live makes a huge difference on how you play the game and how you have resources available to you. And like you said, you have meetups, people are open to talk to you. I think New York is the Olympics, but it's much harder to penetrate that circle. It's people are not necessarily open to talking to everyone. They're more like, I'm already flying here. I'm going 1,000 miles an hour, and either you are doing more than that, and I want to talk to you, or else they're going their way.
Yeah, I think there's some of that. I mean, I think it's just a matter of, planting the seeds and, yeah, I mean, listen, if you're just starting from zero, for sure it's harder. That's why I think Austin's better for that. But I think as you scale, as you get to that next level, it's going to be a lot more effective and efficient to go. It's easier, right? Because, like, for example, I've been, building an audience online. I have a lot of people on LinkedIn, like other platforms. So it's like people, have followed me and connected with me on those platforms. So it's a much easier kind of place now for me as opposed to like a few years ago where nobody knew who I was and I'm just getting started. So for sure, yeah, just getting
Sure.
started. You know, Austin is probably the best city.
It's friendlier.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Dan, if someone is listening and they are a founder stuck in this like messy middle stage, some people call it Death Valley as well, because it's just so difficult to get out of that. What's the one piece of advice you'd give to them today?
messy middle meaning that they're stuck in between getting
They're,
like I'm leaving
they're
corporate.
no, they're starting up. They started something. Now they need to scale, but they're not really ready. Perhaps they are ready. They don't want to take they're that limbo of I'm proved the concept. I am past
Sure.
MVP. I need to start to scale. What advice do you have for them?
Just make sure you understand cash flow, right? No matter what business you have, it is the most important thing. You know, cash on the business, personal cash flow, because I see many companies that run out of money, and then they're done, right? Yeah, like at that point, there's no going back, especially in certain industries like in CPG. I know somebody that was, several brands. Like, it's not hard sometimes to get into retail. They get into like, Target nationwide way too early, way too soon. Then they're out of business in 6 months or a year, right? So you want to make sure that whatever decision you're making, be strategic, be very meticulous, like do one thing at a time, right? And so if you're going to try and do 17 things at a time, you will be out of money very quickly. So be smart about that. Make sure that you're taking calculated risks, because yeah, I mean, you can keep raising money, but eventually it's going to run out, and people are not going to want to go and invest in you. So yeah,
Makes sense. Dan, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Super informative. Really, I'm clarified a lot of what really it means to be e-commerce, and congratulations on your success. Also, good luck with your move to New York.
thank you.
I'm sure that it's going to open more doors, and hopefully can have you back on the show
Of course.
in 5 years.
Yeah.
I want to know where it goes.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Ahmad.